OpenAI has a new research paper out, and you don't see OpenAI coming out with a lot of research papers, but this is really cool and actually has real world implications for how you are going to be interacting, not just with ChatGPT, but probably with large language models going forward. As we know, one of the great things about large language models, especially ChatGPT, is how it can explain it to you. You can say, explain this to me like I'm five or something like that. Well, now what ChatGPT and OpenAI what OpenAI I should say is putting out is an actual research paper to sort of show how they're actually doing this. Because as we know, everything is about adoptability, which means everything is about explainability. It does you no good if you're asking a complex question and getting a bad answer. This paper that they just put out is called Prover Verifier Games: Improve Legibility of Language of Language Model Outputs. And I'll just say the subtitle, and I want to kick it over to Jaden. It says, we, OpenAI, trained strong language models to produce text that is easy for weak language models to verify, and found that this training also made the text easier for humans to evaluate. That sounds complicated. We don't do complicated at AI Applied. We are here to break it down because this really does have implications. Jaden, talk to me about what you read this paper. Tell me about what you're seeing here.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is one of my favorite terms that has come out of Reddit. A great term that has come out of Reddit recently is Eli 5, which is explain like I'm five.
Yes.
There's a bunch of subreddits there. And the complex tasks, complex topics, if you're not an expert on them and you don't know all the like industry jargon, just explain, you ask someone to explain it to you like you're five. Turns out this same concept is really, really powerful when it comes to AI models and kind of looking into the quote unquote black box of how they're actually getting to their answers. And if we can look at this black box and we can look at the steps they take and have it explain it to us like we're five, it's much more likely that we're going to get a good answer and we'll be able to kind of audit the results and make sure it's not hallucinating or something. So how does this whole thing work? It's called the Prover Verifier Game. So essentially, this is a new algorithm that some OpenAI researchers made. And essentially what they're doing is they have two AI models that they're pairing together. So one of them is more powerful, more intelligent. You could think of this something like GPT-4o, whatever the best model is, right? That's going to be one of the models. And they're pairing this with, and that's the prover. So that's the model that it's going to make an assertion. It's going to state a fact. It's going to say something. And it has to prove that it's telling the truth. And it is proving it to a less powerful model. So there's one called the verifier. And this is like the 5-year-old, right? So it's supposed to be explaining to the other model, like it's five, the information that it's doing. And it's also told that it can, they can like trick each other. They can outwit each other. It's this game. They're even if sometimes the fact is true and sometimes the fact is false, and it doesn't matter. The prover is always trying to prove that the fact is either true or false, and the verifier is always trying to figure out if it's true or false. So it's like a game they're playing, right? You trick him and you have to try to figure out if it's true or false, and then one of you wins. And to turn this into an algorithm where essentially they have these two AI models competing in this little game inside. But essentially what has happened is it forces the prover model or the more intelligent model to explain step by step in the most basic terms how it arrived to its assumption or its conclusion or its response. And then essentially what you're able to do is now you're looking into the black box of the AI model. When it gives you a response, it's not just like, oh, you don't just take it for face value. It's like, how did you arrive at that response? So that's what essentially this new algorithm is breaking down. It makes it a lot easier to go and actually audit the responses that are coming out of these AI models because it forces it to explain it in kind of a new and novel way. So I absolutely love this. This is
it's amazing. That was a good explanation. So here's the interesting thing to me is that, so I work at a business school, right? I'm at NYU. And the funny thing is, if you can remember either back to when you were in college or maybe you're in college now, if the professors that you tend to remember throughout your educational journey are the ones who explain things well. It is never the case that when the best teachers at NYU Stern are voted on, it is the deepest research or the biggest brains or anything like that. It may be coincidental that they are, but the people and the educators that students love, and I'm sure you will as well, are the ones who can explain things really well. And if we think about large language models as the ultimate educator, this is where either now, if you're using these tools a lot, you're going to get a lot of your information, or certainly in the future, as these things really start to swamp every aspect of our life, it is yes, of course, it's critical that the information is accurate, but we've been working on the hallucination problem for a long time. Hallucination meaning it lies convincingly. That's coming down, coming down, coming down. There's a lot of great models and working on that. This, to me, is one of the first times that I've really seen it saying, well, that information only gets you so far. How is it explained to somebody else? And how is it like, when is it most important to have it explained well? Because I think that's the models that people tend to go to. And these models, as you remember, Inflection Pi is now sort of Microsoft's new thing. But the thing behind Pi was very much it's empathetic. And the thing behind Elon's Grok was that it was not risque, but it was sort of, whatever, it's going to say what it wants to say. These things have personalities. The one that I think people are going to gravitate to, especially in education, and by the way, who are we kidding? Students are using this more than anyone, is the one that's requires great validation. And I've heard great professors say, unless you can explain this to a 5-year-old, you're not a good professor. So this is what gets me really excited, because I think that the output is something that will feel a little invisible to people, but they'll just start understanding information better. That's where I get excited about it.
100%. It's kind of interesting. We went through phases in the past where people are like, I don't know why, but I just feel like ChatGPT is getting worse. And like, maybe there's a bus where we expect it to be able to do more. And maybe there's some sort of AI models that, some people speculated back a while back. I don't feel like that's quite the case anymore. So I'm not sure if that's a problem they solved or we're getting over that. There was a phase where everyone was talking about that. What I want to talk about, and I think, so what I'm saying is, I think we're going to start seeing the opposite, where we don't know why, but it just feels like they're getting a little better. Okay, I want to tell you the results of this study, what actually happened when they did this, because this is so fascinating. So they did a bunch of different rounds of this while they're kind of training this algorithm. But they would retrain the model between every round that they would do. So I think they did 4 rounds altogether. Something that's interesting, they altered the game a little bit in between each round in some interesting ways. So one thing that they did is they told the prover model that it was either going to be helpful and try to give like the right answer, or it was going to be sneaky and try to convince the verifier essentially that something that was incorrect. This is interesting, like, well, on like an anecdotal, I don't know, like side, this is interesting to me that we're like telling an AI model to be sneaky and deceitful. And it's like, well, it's for training this algorithm we're doing. I'm like, I don't know, something about that rubs me the wrong way, that like we're telling these things to be sneaky and deceitful, but whatever, I'll get over that, because the results are pretty cool. What they would then do is they would have it play the game, and it was trying to trick it. The other one was trying to figure out the right answer. They would then retrain both models between each round. And I think when they did this, well, I said like a less intelligent model, but both models that are doing this are GPT-4 level models. So probably 4.0, and then one that's just, maybe just like 4. So slightly better, but they're not drastically different, right? It's not like one of the models is really terrible. Okay. So they retrained them between each round, and they told them how they performed in the previous rounds. So what ended up happening was the prover got better at proving, because it was like, oh, they figured you out, or they understood. And so it accomplished its goal. And the one that was trying to, figure out what's actually happening, it was told, oh, you got tricked by this, or, oh, you actually caught this. So they're being retrained on how they did, which I think is so interesting. It's like a human learning, the test results at the end, so that you can like better, move on or whatever. There you can like essentially learn. So I thought this was really interesting. And then they had a bunch of human contractors. Oh, and as far as like what they was actually giving them, in a lot of these games, it was just math problems. So math problems with known answers. And so, it essentially they're trying to figure it out.
No, that's huge. I think first I was doing math, but also, excuse me, I agree. I think that one of the cool things about it, and yes, I don't love it being sneaky, but it is, it's almost like it's red teaming itself, totally. Right? And one of the things that it says in the paper itself, it says, by requiring models to produce justifications that are clear and verifiable, we can enhance trust in their outputs. And I think that's really clear. So, Jaden, we talk a lot about, how just like little tips and tricks around ChatGPT come up from time to time. Tip it $200, etc. And you and I, they're fun to try actually, and you might as well try them. They're kind of cool. But the one that I think is consistently useful is the chain of thought. And really all that is you're just essentially asking ChatGPT, take me through your reasoning. Walk me through logical step by step. How are you getting to this answer? Don't just give me an answer. Tell me how you're getting there, because then you can verify the process as you go along. It also forces this large language model to work from, kind of like almost take baby steps rather than jumping to something in a black box. It sort of shines a light into the black box to a certain extent. And that's what I really like about this. When you have an easier solution, it's easier to verify. So even it kind of almost attacks the hallucination problem on the other side too, by saying, you can tell if I'm hallucinating or not because I'm going to show you exactly how I got there. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I think this is so interesting. This is what they specifically said in their blog post about it over at OpenAI. They said, essentially, they're just hoping that the work that they've done here, quote, will be instrumental in developing AI systems whose outputs are not only correct, but also transparently verifiable, whereby enhancing trust and safety in the real world application. So I love this. This is essentially a way for us to start actually verifying and removing the hallucinations. I've seen tools that are like, we remove hallucinations, but those are just black boxes as well a lot of the time. So I love that it walks step by step. One interesting thing it did say, though, is they had like real, they had like real humans reviewing all of the answers and helping like train and looking at it. And it said the likelihood of like the verifier model getting tricked was that like a very similar likelihood to an actual human. So they actually had humans like reading through like the proofs and stuff. And oftentimes the human would like be like, okay, yeah, this looks good. And the verifier would be like, yeah, this looks good. And it was actually like false. But it's good that it's essentially training it to be as good as a human. I think we'll probably get to a point where it's better than a human. If you could trick a human, you can't trick this AI model. But it's very interesting. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And terrified of training these AI models to be sneaky. Maybe that's just me.
Kudos to Jayden for always keeping it real with, we can't totally trust these things, not because they're not great, because Jayden is constantly waiting for these things to stab humanity in the back. We are going to find out together whether it does, but we are huge optimists here. But this is one of the problems we want to solve out there, folks. We want to solve this hallucination problem. It looks like OpenAI has done a great job on this. Kudos to Jayden for finding this thing out. This just came out, this paper, so nicely spotted on that. If you have enjoyed this episode and you're willing to leave us a rating or review, we just so appreciate it. It really means a ton to us. We read every single one. We can't tell you how excited we are about that. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have an amazing rest of the day.